All right, so Jared has a question. Great question, actually. He's asking about speed and direction, but how are we determining that? How are we determining if we're straight, if we're crooked, if we're going with or against the current? I think there's a lot of different ways. I do have a video on this, a short video. If you go to the how-to section on YouTube, you can see this video. But I think that if you have a chute rigger, it's a lot easier. But if you don't have a chute rigger, it's not the end of the world.
I don't either, so.
Yeah, Jeremy won't let me. I want to mount one right in the top of this motor in the back. I think it's strong enough. Put those big GRK construction screws, a couple of them, I'll hold it right in there. But anyways, I think it's easier if you're running the same rods. Is one thing. So if all your leg cores are on the same rod, all your coppers are on the same rod, that'll help. If your high diver on both sides are the same, it'll help. If your low divers on both sides are the same, it helps. And what I'm looking for when I'm fishing on a boat that doesn't have a chute rigger is I want to see both of my high divers pulling very similarly. Not like one's tucked under and one's like opened up a little bit. You're not straight, at that point. The same thing though with my boards. Now, if you have I know on small boats, a lot of times you're only running 1 or 2 boards. I generally run 5 boards on each side every day. I'll run 4 in the dark and then I add 1 more once I can see. But which doesn't always make people happy because it's usually congested where I'm at. But if you put them out there, you have to reel them in too. So if you want to put your stuff out there and let it ride all day and not reel it in for people, then don't run that many boards. You have to be responsible. If you're taking up a lot of space, you have to be willing to give to everybody that you're passing. It's your responsibility because you're so wide. That's my opinion. Anyways, and I always will move my boards. Mostly, always. Especially the mate will do that. I tell them to reel them in. Hey, tighten that up. But anyways, so I know like if you're running a 7 color on one side and a 300 on the other side, it's never going to look the same. Chances are you're not going to have them on the same board. But if everything's the same, so if you have a 7 color on both sides and you're running Ninja boards on both of those, and you have the same Akuma rod and everything looks great, if both sides are pulling the same, and if you look out the back of the boat and they're both tracking the same angle off the corners of the boat, you're probably straight. If one's tracking here and one's here, the current is affecting you in a manner like this, or it's pushing against the boat. But it can be wind as well. I mean, it's much harder in a small boat because there's so many more things that come into play. If you have a bow mount trolling motor with autopilot and you control with it, it's amazing how much straighter you can make your boat go when you're pulling the bow into the direction you want to go, rather than having the back doing this, trying to compensate for that.
Jared, being that I'm running a smaller boat, I'm looking at those lines, and just like what Adam said with my dipsies, and I have 2 riggers on the back corners. Those rigger lines have to be straight. If they're off to the side, not going to work. What they're really saying is you're trolling into the current or with it. And I think you'll normally find is the current will be going opposite of the wind if you're in a high wind situation. So, but I'm always looking at, like Adam said, angle of those lines and those riggers, where they're at.
And that can change. I mean, that's great information, but there are days, especially when you fish charters, you have to go and your stuff's not always perfect because you're trying to get to a different depth where the fish are at this depth, but one side is not right, but you'll still, the fish are there, so you just compromise the one side to get fish, you know what I mean? And a lot of times you'll be catching them on this side and they'll say, how come this side of the boat isn't going? Well, you turn back around, go back down, and you're getting them on the other side. So.
And that goes to, earlier I just made a comment about setting yourself up so that you can have a good troll. If the wind's coming out of the north and you're in a small boat and you're going to try and go straight into 2-footers, trolling straight into them, it's not going to be fun. You're setting yourself up to be on a bad troll that's not as controllable as if you take them on the back of your boat, or take them on the corner of your boat or whatever you're doing. And then using bags. I know people really don't like bags, but they're huge in controlling your boat and getting your boat to straighten up. Hopefully, I have a video on bags as well. If you go to the how-to things, there's a whole how we use them, how we're rigging them up, all that kind of stuff. But it goes to small boats too. And a lot of times when you have a following sea, if you're using a bag, you can compensate for maybe you getting some wind on your starboard side, so you're running a bag on the same side as the wind, and it's going to kind of pull the bow in, so you're going to be running straighter. Both sides of the boat are straighter because you have the bag's pulling the boat, but the wind's pulling it back or pushing it back, and then also it gets rid of the surge. So oftentimes, if you have a bag in the water with a following sea, it's two things. It's going to keep your consistent speed. You're not going to go fast, slow every time a wave hits you. And the second thing it's going to do is allow you to run more thrust out of your motor, which is going to give you more steering. And, it's just a beneficial thing. So bags if you don't use bags, it's really something you should mess around with.